Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Arslanbek Makhmudov made short work of the unbeaten Nigerian Raphael Akpejiori, stopping him in the second round of their fight, which was the co-main event to the Jared Anderson and Charles Martin main event in Toledo, Ohio. Bit of a mouthful. So this was rough and tumble. Arslanbek Makhmudov bringing out the right hand, the right uppercut and the left hook, and he was just going to town, basically trying to walk through Raphael Akpejiori. And after the first knockdown, a right hand which sent Akpejiori to the canvas, it looked like it was basically all downhill from there. Akpejiori, who was a multi-sport athlete, basketball to football and now boxing, he was on rubbery legs and finding it really hard to stay in the fight and be competitive. And heading into this one, you had Akpejiori as a relative unknown to most boxing fans. He'd been building a resume in Miami on shows promoted by Glenn Johnson, but they weren't shown on major platforms via Fight TV or any of those sorts of usual means. So there really hadn't been a lot of footage. So it kind of seemed like it was either going to go one of two ways, that he was a lamb to the slaughter, which I think most people thought it would be, or he'd be somewhat competitive, and more so competitive than people probably would have thought. But unfortunately for him, it was the first. So ultimately he was bullied, he was dropped. The second round, you had a situation, it was almost like a bullfighter and a matador. You had Raphael Akpejiori, who was the bull, trying to sort of, at one point, grab onto Makhmudov or something, who basically just sort of olayed out of the way. And Akpejiori fell to the canvas with very little effort. The referee gives him a count, because there was nothing really that landed at all. The referee gives him a count, doesn't like what he sees, and it's all over. That was about a minute or so into the second round. So Arslanbek Makhmudov, the first fight in the United States, first fight under this co-promotional arrangement with Top Rank where he fought in the United States, and a situation where he was a co-main event and gets a stoppage. This is kind of what I expected. I think many people did. But perhaps the nature of the win and how, albeit fun, it was very sloppy, and Arslanbek Makhmudov really was just throwing haymakers and trying to get Akpejiori out of there. So I don't necessarily know if this is really a statement win, because we've seen these sorts of performances from Arslanbek Makhmudov before, and against probably roughly similar level opposition. In fact, Arslanbek Makhmudov, you might make a case, after having fought Carlos Takam and also Johnny Rice previously, this was a step down in opposition and a fight that for some reason they really wanted to make. Remembering, this was made for last year, but for some reason didn't go ahead. But they've made it again, and now you've got that two-round knockout for Makhmudov under his belt. I guess maybe this was meant to be some sort of showcase, a demonstration to the United States market. Look, there's this big hulking Russian who lives and trains in Canada, who can get these sorts of knockouts. He's wild, he's reckless, he's powerful, he's got a good chin, and we can see how far he goes. But I don't know, it just kind of felt like, for me at least, it just fell a little bit short of expectations. If he was maybe a bit more crisp and clinical, I think I probably would have viewed the win in a slightly better light. But overall, we've kind of been here, done that, got the postcard on these sorts of opponents. Makhmudov, at this point in his career, needs a bit better. He's gone through a tough, hard fight with Carlos Takam, dropped them a couple of times, and got the win in a very, sometimes competitive fight with Takam, who, as we know, is still a world-level gatekeeper, having recently also beaten Tony Yoka. So you kind of have to go, okay, Makhmudov belongs at a certain level, but where's the ceiling? And we kind of need to start to see that tested, because against the guys coming up in the division that are in that sort of top 20 or so, and especially deeper into it, they're going to be much more clinical. They're powerful, often most of them, or they've got very good skills and would sort of put, punch holes in them like Swiss cheese, because they can box and move. It's kind of, you've got a couple of different iterations, either someone who's big and powerful and could damage you, or someone who can box and move. And there's maybe a couple of other guys like a Joseph Parker, Michael Hunter, that are sort of box and move, maybe not hugely powerful, but enough to get a lot of people's respect. So you do have a case that Makhmudov needs to step up. But the question is, what is next? What are they looking to do with him? I know that there is that fight with Simon Keane and Guido Vianello. That's one from either Tiger Management being in Simon Keane, and one from Top Rank and Guido Vianello. You have Arslanbek Makhmudov, who's co-promoted by both, maybe the winner. That might make some sense, but then again, I think he beats both. And Simon Keane, even if he beats Vianello, he's a glass cannon. He's damaged goods. He's going to get beaten at any real level. I want to see some upward mobility in the opponents now. Not a drop down and then just sort of the rest of the year against subpar opposition to build his name a little bit. Got to throw him in like a Carlos Takam, those sorts of fights. Or better now, throw him in tough. Because honestly, I mean, what are we waiting for? The guy's not 25 years old. He is in his 30s. And he's, obviously the way that he fights as well, comes forward, not a lot of nuance to his game. He does take some shots. Yeah, I mean, that style of fighting is going to catch up with him eventually. And as I've always said, it's going to be fun until the wheels fall off. But we need to see someone who can actually start jacking one of the wheels off, at least just to get a better indication. Can he walk through some guys' punches? Can he take it? And can he end up having a situation where we go, well, this is going to be fun, him and Joe Joyce or him and Zhang Ji, those level of opponents, him versus Filip Hrgovic. I would like to see all of those fights. There are a number of fights potentially that could be made. What about him versus Otto Wallin, who's now off contract? Him versus Jermaine Franklin? Surely there are some names that they can put him in with, because it's time for him to actually face some guys, at least on the level, stay on that same level as the Carlos Takam, or start to go higher. Let's not step back and, just try to get a few more highlight reel knockouts, because he's got some. Let's move on and actually put him in tough and make the best of his prime. It makes sense to me. As for Akpejiori, the basketballer come footballer come boxer, he had been working with Malik Scott. Clearly he's been improving some, but I do think it's a situation that his sort of ceiling after this fight, it's evident. He can be in probably some fights at a top 30 to top 60 level, somewhere between there with guys of that ilk. But I do think that, there's no real step higher that's coming for him. But he can be in some fun fights. He's clearly an athlete, and he's got a bit of ability. And at 6'6", 7", he is a guy that's got the height on his side and can eke out a career in the heavyweight division. And if he's willing to fight regularly, well, he can certainly get some paydays. What do you make of the fight? What do you make of the performance? Makhmudov rolls on. How far? Yet to be known. Who against next? If it's going to be anyone we care about, we'll see. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.